Hi, my name is Nicole Jester.
And I'm Monica Galaviz.
And we're here to present our hot topic on response to intervention.
So let's get started by watching this icebreaker video.
This is a story all about why you've heard this term RTI. We'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. We'll explain it all now so you'll be aware. In response to intervention, RTI, we monitor all students so no one slips by, assessing all students for academic risk in subjects like reading, writing, math, and early lit.
A few years it may go through. We'll tell you each year and what they have to do. We'll start with you, because all kids go there. The universal screening 3 times a year.
There are certain benchmarks for every grade to test student skills and how they behave. If they make a mark tier 1s for them,
well, they'll get more evidence-based instruction.
Alright, so that was just a little introduction to our topic. So let's get started.
What is RTI?
RTI is a multi-tier approach to academic and behavioral intervention. It is used to provide systematic and intensive assistance to all students, including those who are at risk or are already underperforming for their appropriate age or grade level standards.
Question 1. What roles does response to intervention play in K through 12 education?
RTI seeks to prevent behavioral or academic failure through universal screening, early intervention, frequent progress monitoring, and intensive research-based instruction.
So it's to help students who are struggling in these areas of behavior as well as academics, right?
Exactly.
So it's in addition to their academics at school.
Perfect, yep.
So what do you think, Monica? Fact or myth? RTI intervention should be tried for no more than 6 to 8 weeks. What do you think?
I'm going to say myth because according to the National Research Center on Learning Disabilities, students' performance should determine how long interventions are used. Adequate time must be provided to determine if the intervention will work, and adequate time must be provided to allow successful approaches to narrow the gap between the level at which the student is performing and where he or she needs to be.
You are correct, so we can't believe everything we read.
Definitely not.
Let's go to our next question.
What 4 essential components make up response to intervention?
A school-wide, multi-level instructional and behavioral system for preventing school failure would be number 1. So this means that all across the board, we're trying to help out our students for success.
Yeah. And screening is another important one.
Number 3 would be process monitoring, so see how they're doing throughout the intervention.
And 4 is a data-based decision-making for instruction, movement within the multi-level system, and disability identification, and of course in accordance with state law.
So students can move between the tiers or levels of instruction based on their need, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Well, let's find out if there's another myth. Myth number 2.
RTI reduces the need for special ed teachers. What do you think?
This is definitely a myth because they work with students and monitor performance via curriculum-based measures and other means to assess whether students are meeting goals. Successful RTI programs promote more effective use of their skills and expertise. Special educators and general educators both will be required to collaborate to effectively implement a plan and monitor students' responsiveness to interventions. General educators should always bear in mind that RTI, when done correctly, will reinforce many good practices that teachers are already using.
Thanks for sharing all that. That's super important.
This leads us to our next question. Question number 3. What are the differences between levels, tiers, and interventions? This video is going to explain exactly what all that means.
Here, we'll look at a 3-tiered model, often depicted as a triangle, as one example of how a tiered framework
can be used as a school-wide strategy for instructing all students. All students will participate in Tier 1 instruction. At this level, they'll receive effective, differentiated instruction provided by the general classroom teacher as part of an evidence-based core curriculum. The evidence-based instruction offered at this level can be expected to meet the learning needs of 80 to 85% of all students. For students who don't respond adequately to Tier 1 instruction, more intensive interventions come into play. Tier 2 interventions build upon the differentiated instruction provided at Tier 1 by offering students more systematic instruction and interventions strategically designed to help them catch up in areas of difficulty. These interventions are usually delivered to a small group of students within the general classroom, either by the classroom teacher or by another team member supporting the teacher who has also been trained to deliver the interventions. Tier 2 interventions will be offered to the 15% of students for whom Tier 1 instruction was not sufficiently intensive to meet their specific learning needs. But here is a critical point. Students who receive targeted Tier 2 interventions continue to participate in general Tier 1 instruction. Tier 2 interventions do not replace the core curriculum, they supplement it. For example, Dennis has been selected to receive Tier 2 interventions based on the results of recent reading fluency data. He'll continue to participate in the 90 minutes of core reading instruction that is provided to all students in Tier 1 each day. But in addition, he'll spend another 30 minutes per day receiving targeted reading instruction at Tier 2. Under RTI, his opportunities for learning and for catching up to his classmates will have been extended. We've saved the most intensive interventions available for the small percentage of students who still lag significantly behind their peers in making academic gains. Tier 3 interventions supplement the previous tiers by providing the most intensive evidence-based interventions delivered to individual students or in very small groups. Again, the intensity of instruction at this level increases. The size of student groups is reduced, and their opportunities for direct instruction extended. Interventions in Tier 3 may be delivered by an intervention specialist or even a special education teacher. But again, these interventions supplement the instruction provided at Tier 1, not replace it. And students do not have to be identified as disabled in order to receive these interventions. Only about 5% of all students will require these intensive Tier 3 interventions. Of these students, only a portion may go on to require special ed services.
Wow, Monica, that was very informative on how those levels in tier works. Let's see if there's any myths that can go along with the video that we watched.
Alright, so we're on to myth number 3. Tier 3 is another name for special education. What do you say?
It's a myth because Tier 3, a 3-tier model, refers to different levels of intervention in a general education classroom. It is a concept advocated by many education organizations and researchers and is closely tied to RTI. The most extensive level of intervention provided to the students in general education is often known as Tier 3. Any student who does not respond to intensive interventions may qualify for special education services, but only when it has been definitively established that the general education setting provides neither the intensity nor type of intervention necessary to improve students' performance.
All right, thank you for that information. And now we're on to question 4. How can response to intervention be used to ensure appropriate identification of students with disabilities?
Well, RTI encourages practitioners to implement early intervention and reduce the likelihood that students are wrongfully identified as having a disability. Struggling students are identified using a 2-stage screening process. So, Monica, just so that way we can understand, these students who are participating in the intervention, they're not necessarily special ed students, correct?
No. So there's a first stage, which is a brief assessment for all students conducted at the beginning of the school year. Then there's a second stage, which is conducted for students who scored below the cut point or more accurately predict which students are truly at risk for poor learning outcomes.
I was kind of struggling with the second stage part. I wasn't really understanding how that worked. Could you explain it a little bit better?
Yeah, so in other words, students who scored below average are being reassessed to ensure that they will or to ensure whether or not they will or will not require additional interventions.
Oh, okay, so they're not necessarily stuck at that level.
No, definitely not.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see if there's a myth tied to this question. Well, there is. Myth number 4. You cannot refer a student for special education evaluation if your school or district has an RTI process.
That is a myth. A parent and/or educator may submit a request for an initial evaluation to determine if the student has a disability. RTI does not weaken that right. Beyond that, it states that in states and districts adopting RTI process to assist in identifying students with learning disabilities must make sure that these are not add-on features to the current system. RTI produces must be core components of the full and individual comprehensive assessment.
Got it. So anybody can request that a student get the help.
Exactly. If they feel that that student needs the help, they are more than welcome to seek that help.
Great. Question 5.
RTI framework helps strengthen RTI implementation by helping schools understand how program becomes increasingly intensive. This helps schools accurately classify practices as primary, secondary, or tertiary.
Question number 6. Does response to intervention benefit all students?
Let's watch this quick video and find out.
Well, that was helpful. I guess we're back to our question number 5, which was, well, Monica, I don't know how we left out question number 5. I realized we said the answer, but I don't know how we left that out. But I wanted to go back because that question is important. So our question was, what are the benefits of implementing a response to intervention framework?
That's right. And as I mentioned, those benefits were that it helps strengthen RTI implementation by helping schools understand how programming becomes increasingly intensive. Remember the primary, secondary, tertiary tiers. That is in response to that.
So it's making sure that our students are understanding the content that they're being given and that they can appropriately handle the content and respond at their own grade level, right?
Exactly. And then the last one was that it helps schools accurately classify practices. So say a student goes to a different school, they'll know, and that school has an RTI framework implemented, that school will know exactly where that student is in the framework.
So it continues with them wherever they go.
Yes.
They can always get the help.
Yes, that's the beauty of RTI.
Well, that's awesome. I'm beginning to love response to intervention more and more. Let's find out what we've already done. Question 6, and we watched our video, but let's see what the myth is. Myth number 5 says RTI delays special education referrals. I don't know if I can believe all of this, but let's see what it has to say.
So I'm going to say that is a myth because the goal of RTI is to broaden the range of academic and behavioral interventions in general education, not to prevent or deny students access to needed academic services and support. Interventions should be designed and implemented over a period of time, and relevant data from these interventions should be taken into consideration and should inform an instructional supports team's decisions over time. But the fact remains, a successful RTI process will identify at-risk students as early as possible.
Awesome. That'll take us to our last question. Question number 7. Can students move back and forth between levels of the prevention system?
They definitely could, and they should move back and forth across the levels of prevention based on their success or response or difficulty at the level where they are receiving intervention.
Well, I think that's great. And also, I see that students can receive intervention in one academic area at the second or tertiary, thanks Monica, level while staying at the primary level in other areas. So they can be getting assistance in math, right? And not necessarily need it in any other area of the content, correct?
Exactly. So you can be in the primary level for most of the academic areas, but if you struggle in a specific area, that student can be in, say, the secondary or tertiary level for that specific area in which that student struggles.
Awesome. Well, I definitely have learned a lot from our presentation. Let's see what our classmates can learn from our presentation. So if you go to the link below, just show us what you know and how much you've learned. Click on that and we'll get your results. We really appreciate you guys watching our video, and here we have included our sources that we've used to collect all of our important information.
Yeah, and National Center on Response to Intervention was a great resource, as well as frameworks for response to intervention in early childhood. So thank you so much for watching.
Again, thank you for watching.